not that I'm doing anything wrong, but having those types of valid advice on isn't good.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? I'm like everybody. For that reason specifically, I'm not looking at it. I know I'm always fighting. You know what I mean?
You know when the next meeting is. I mean, they might post their stuff in just 3 days.
From last week? Okay.
Okay, we're gonna get started.
Okay,
As far as the room is, that doesn't mean we don't have work to do, and be that as it may. Would you like to call a meeting to order, Sherry?
Yes, would everyone like to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll go ahead and start the meeting with staff and board member introductions. Tracy, can you start, please?
Tracy Bowser, PCCD staff.
Wayne Howard, PCCD staff.
William White, Pennsylvania State Police.
Greg Weshover, Constable of Franklin County.
Sherry Leffler, PCCD staff.
Tom Berletic.
John Brew, Constable, Dauphin County. John Fowle, PCCD.
Bud Fights, Constable, Allegheny County.
Merwine, staff support.
Diane Morgan, attorney with PCCD.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and start going through the action items on the agenda for this morning.
Okay, folks, because we're under some time constraint here for this room today, I understand, I was absent the last meeting, and I understand that the order of public comment was reversed yet again towards the end of the meeting or at the end of the meeting, and because of that time constraint, we are going to open the floor for public comment now. So if anybody has anything to say, you have 3 minutes. I got a little timer up here. Start talking, I hit the button. When you hit 3 minutes, I hit the button, tell you to sit down.
Will you be opening it up at the end too?
No.
Yeah, let me go ahead first.
You're up.
Ron Quinn, Center County and PFOC. Let me go ahead and express that point. Okay, first is that it's nice to have a public voice, period, and stuff. But basically, what you're doing is that while we sit here and watch the action take place, we'd like to be able to have some input, even though it may be just shortly after the fact, but it's still at the same meeting. And to ask us to bring up some issues that we don't know what's going to be currently on the agenda until we just can't come here and stuff is kind of putting the cart before the horse. It puts us at a disadvantage. It's our organization because it's our training and stuff. We should be able to have that voice into the matters that are being discussed at the current time, not prior to the issues being discussed.
Okay, very good. And your remarks are noted. They're on the record. Any other?
Well, what's the reason?
I just said because we have a time constraint, and we've got to be out of this room.
Is this going to be a permanent change?
It may be. I would just like to point out that, Constable, where are you from? What area of the?
Center County and PFOC.
Okay, you live in a township or a borough?
Township.
Have you ever attended township meetings?
Yes.
Okay, most municipal meetings that I'm had the experience to attend or to speak at, the public comments are never at the end of the meeting. They're always at the beginning of the meeting, where there's a segue between the very beginning. And I don't understand why it was changed back to the end of the meeting, but we'll take your remarks into consideration.
Well, actually, the best thing, because what I've seen at township meetings is that upon the discussion of each issue, just before a vote is done, they'll do a public voice and hear the concerns before each issue. not before the meeting and not just after the meeting, but during the meeting, basically, what it comes down to.
That's very good.
And so, it would be nice to have that affordability to be able to discuss those issues. But barring that, because our practice traditionally was at the end of the meetings, I'd prefer it at the end of the meetings versus before, so that we have some say in what the issues that are being discussed that day.
Okay. Well, as stated, your remarks are noted and we'll take it into consideration. Any other comments? Antoine?
Good morning, Antoine Malloy, Allegheny County. I just wanted to bring some concerns from our area on that side of the state regarding the course of action for training and the upcoming cycle for firearms. Our concern in Allegheny County and the surrounding areas is that at the end of 2019, there's going to be a huge amount, if you guys decide to go with certifying everybody for 2 years, there's going to be a huge amount of people that need to be trained, and which will create a bottleneck. So one of the things we're suggesting and hoping that you would do or decide is for, I know everybody's waiting for fun, or trying to figure out how we can get some type of funding or ways to get some type of cost savings to assist with the training and stuff like that. But we think that, and I whether everybody across the state is in agreement with it or not, but we think that the people who are, the constables who are willing to pay for the training should be able to do that. And if you can get the numbers of classes to maybe 10 or more and requisite number of trainers, firearms instructors to be paid for by the constables who are taking the classes, we think that that wouldn't be any cost to the board or to our to the Constable Education Training Fund, and should be a possible solution to be looked at. So I just want to float that and let everybody know that we're concerned that there's going to be a huge issue, and I know we're working on solutions and things like that, but I think that we think from that side of the state, and I've talked to everybody from the several surrounding counties, that that's one possible solution, and it should be looked at as a way to get us toward the goal of getting everybody certified and being certified on time and being able to continue work without any stoppage of certification for firearms. That's pretty much it for me.
Very good. Well thought out and well presented. Do you have any remarks to that?
Yeah, I'll respond back to that. At the July board meeting, the board did vote to do a 4-hour qualification.
Okay.
So basically, you would just show up for a qualification, you would have a safety briefing, and then you would qualify.
Yes.
So there would be no practice, therefore no training ammunition. That would be not provided any longer. And that's what that is the action that's going to be taken forward to the commission in September, was that action item. So there will be training and certification, or actually qualification for certification next year as a 4-hour qualification course.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Constable Quinn again. In the lines of training here, we had asked for consideration about being able to accept accreditation from other outside agencies. Is that something that is also going to be presented in September to the commission?
That was not voted on by the board.
Okay. Can we get that raised to the board, stuff like that, so that we can look at that?
That was part of one of the long-term courses of action, and that will be something. At the last meeting, we did give the board firearms comparisons of different programs throughout the state, and that is something that we will have to come back and address at a later time for a long-term solution for the program.
Because I'm looking at programs, for example, like NRA law enforcement, whereas number one, it's a lot stricter and things, but it also uses less ammunition and stuff, so it could be a cost savings there as well. But there are other agencies or types of qualification courses that are similar to that, and like you showed in the last time that we got together in July, the comparisons between all the various different law enforcement agencies, we all have different standards and stuff, but and from what I can see, no one is greater than the other and stuff like that. So if we're looking at some cost saving measures, whereas just like he was saying, if a constable wants to go out and pay for their own, and it's from an accredited agency, why shouldn't we go ahead and accept that then? That's just one less constable that the CETB has to spend money on then.
Understood, and we will just bring that up at other board meetings to discuss
It's a good point, and we brought that up,
for the work.
yeah, all three work groups, that was one of the topics that was brought up. So, good point. Okay, any other comments? Sure.
Okay, we will start moving forward with the action items for this board meeting. The first of which is gonna be the unapproved draft minutes of the July 17th meeting. I do have to point out on page 4, about midway down on the page, there is a typographical error. The motion was made by Major White, so that correction will be made based upon the board's approval. We have a motion to approve the minutes, or any other comments, suggestions, edits?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Can we take a roll call vote, starting with Major White, please?
Aye.
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 Thank you. The next action item on the board's agenda for today will be the unapproved financial report for the August 9th meeting, and I will turn it over to Beth Romero for those remarks.
Good morning. The fiscal report for the fourth quarter of the 17-18 state fiscal year is on pages 10 through 15. Under receipts, the balance carried forward from the previous fiscal year was $2,767,345.05. Fees collected through the fourth quarter were $1,760,748.71. Total funds available as of June 30th, 2018, $4,528,093.76. Under expenditures and commitments, total cumulative expenditures as of June 30, 2018 were $2,765,505.93. Total cumulative expenditures and commitments through June 30, 2018, $6,567,216.73. And total uncommitted funds as of June 30, 2018 were negative $2,039,122.97.
Do we have any questions from the board members on the fiscal report?
So, fiscally, you're saying minus 2 million, correct?
That's correct, and that includes commitments that go out beyond
The
the
current
period
fiscal
that we're
year.
reporting on, so.
I guess my question, Mr. Merwin, as far as administrative costs, I mean, there's been a lot of cuts across the board. I've seen staff do a lot, I've seen the schools do a lot. Is there indirect staff that's getting charged against us that we need to look at? Is there other folks in this building or elsewhere that's charging against this program that we can consider making cuts to?
We need to look at all possible options, yes.
Have we done that, or is that something that needs to be done?
We have started conversations in that regard to look at what other administrative costs we can address.
Okay. My thought process is, everybody else is cutting in the program. I mean, we're taking hits on training, we're taking all this other stuff, but indirect staff, I didn't know if we had people out, in like the mail room, we have people like in HR, we have people that are charged against this program, that their costs could be diverted somewhere else, for example. And is there a potential on indirect staff of diverting those costs somewhere else within the state government?
Well, if they're working for the board, then their time would be charged to the board. We wouldn't be able to charge another program for them working for this program.
How closely do we audit in that? I mean, as far as the time that's being charged by indirect staff against us?
Well, all staff that are being charged against you, whether you consider them indirect staff or full-time staff, are monitored in various different methods. Most of them that are doing indirect, or what you're calling indirect, or it's part-time, do monthly timesheets that have to be reviewed and approved by the supervisor.
Okay. So monthly time sheets, so we have record of that with what they're charging against the program. We can audit that to see if we're getting bang for our buck here.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's page 13 of the board packet. That's the fact sheet.
All right, good. Thank you. Thanks.
Well,
Any other questions from the board? I'm looking for a motion to approve the financial report of August 9th.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call vote, could we start with Constable Plates, please?
Aye.
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 Thank you. The next item on the, action item on the agenda is a transition policy that we have drafted to bring before the board. John, would you like to discuss it?
Sure. As we've discussed in past meetings, as we go through changing the program, how it's delivered, how it's administered, et cetera, there's going to be issues that come up that will need a transitional policy, a temporary policy that ultimately would lead to regulatory change, et cetera. So when we started looking at this, really the only two things, and we worked with legal counsel on this, was in the firearms arena because of the firearms becoming, to just show up and shoot the qualification course. Two things was on page 16, under firearms qualification, the first item, number A, is basically that we're not providing remediation. So that remediation is not mandated in regulation or the act or anything. It was something the board instituted probably 10 or 15 years ago to help constables improve their, attempt at qualification. It's basically in the training materials, we provide an hour or up to 75 rounds of remediation if a guy fails a phase. The instructors would document that, and then they would get, obviously, their second chance. Because of time constraints, and we used to provide that remediation info. And the board, we're not providing remediation, so we're not providing that info. So in that, it's 4 hours in a class of 20 to 25 guys. It's adequate time, but we're not going to have time for that remediation, for training, et cetera. I mean, the guys should come up. If you get 10, 12 on the line, you have 3 or 4 fail. By the end of the day, you're going to have the failures are the priorities. So we're not going to have that time to conduct remediation. So it's been current practice, and so we just want to kind of put in a policy that we're no longer providing that. And then the second item, B, the board has brought this up before, and through the life of the program, I can tell you this is an issue that's going back and forth with the board over the life of the program. In the regulation, it states for basic training and continuing education, when you complete it and you get certified, you're good through basically December 31st of the following year. The board started that practice with firearms, but never put it into regulation. It was just, that's how they did it. And at various times, the board has discussed, if you fail, if I'm going to qualification today and I fail, should my firearm certification cease as the day of my failure? So I fail phase 1, I get my second attempt, I fail, I've got my 2 attempts, should your firearm certification stop? Because the way it happens now in practice is I'm still good based on last year. And then I may not take a requalification course again until 3 months later. But we know that today I failed, and I'm not trying to requalify for 3 months. And as we've talked, general accepted practice is the day you fail, your firearm certification ceases. So that would be that change. So, and again, it's not a regulation that you're good on firearms to the end of the year. It was just, that's how the board did that practice over the last 20 years.
And based upon basic training, because it is under
Right,
basic
because,
training
and I think early on when we started firearms, because we started, the first year was basic training, the second year was Con Ed, third year was firearms we introduced. And the board just started that practice, and to kind of continue at various points in the program, they did discuss changing that, but they never put it into reg, and they never changed the practice. So this will be changing that practice. Any questions?
Makes sense from a liability standpoint.
Right, and that's what's come up again. I know some of you have mentioned it, that, why did we continue that practice? So.
We had mentioned that.
Right.
And now it's being addressed.
Right. And again, so this transitional policy, I foresee as we then get into online training, there are going to be more issues that will build into this policy. And then once we get to the program, sometime in 2020 where we think things have settled down, then we'll work on making regulatory changes to go forward. Because we can't start that process till we've worked through all this. So.
does the board need to take action on this, since this is still a working doc, so we should take action?
Yeah, I mean, it's more, yeah, well, because we can continue to add to it. I mean,
Yeah.
once the policy, they can approve this, and if, 6 months from now, we're working on online training issues, we can always continue to add to it.
And add to that.
Right, amend it.
Okay, so you need a motion to approve the policy statement as presented on page 16. That's my motion.
You made the motion.
I made the-
I'll second that.
If we could have a roll call vote, starting with Major White, please.
Aye.
Motion passed. The next action item on the agenda is the 2019 board meeting schedule. And as noted here on the schedule, we do have the start times as being 9 a.m. Is there any
I just want to comment, so now that policy will go to the
Sorry.
commission meeting September 12th for their approval, or comment, whatever, so.
The board meetings are starting at 9, starting at 9 again. Is there any concerns, questions, or issues with board meetings starting at 9 a.m.?
No, I think it makes sense.
I mean, most of the board members are traveling from out of the area, and you're here overnight, so, and it's just been a little easier to come and start at 9 a.m.
I just, feel over the next year or 2 years, drive a lot long. I mean, and I really do. I would rather start at 9, and try to get wrapped by noon versus starting at 10 and run over to 1:30. So
I agree with
I have no
co-chair Westover. I wouldn't mind if they started at 6:30.
I think staff would want that time.
I'm up at 5, so.
I make a motion that we accept that.
Okay,
At 9 o'clock start.
I second it.
we have a roll call vote, starting with Constable Pikes, please.
Aye.
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 So moved, and the meeting schedule will go forth as approved. John, would you like to take over the discussion on this one?
Yeah, we're just giving you a verbal update. So long-term course actions, one of the biggest issues that came out of the work group is online training. So, and parallel to the constable's program is the deputy sheriff program. They're kind of in the same boat, and they're also looking to go towards online training. So they were a little bit further ahead on trying to move to online training than this program. So I'm using them as the test case. But so we looked at piloting a 8-hour module, taking it out of the academy, the classroom, and making it a 4-hour online class. And so we've talked to some entities who provide LMS online training. We gave them that curriculum. They all got the same disc and said, take a look at this using our existing material. What would it cost just to plop that, configure it and put it online? Now, we weren't asking for hosting costs or talking how many people we're training, just taking our existing curriculum and putting it in an online format in their platform. So we had 3 costs come back, 2 very similar, one about 4 or 5 times higher than the other 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to draft up a technical work statement. So now we'll get into the details, saying, okay, if I want to train 1,200 people online throughout the year, here are all the requirements. They would have to, there would be data exchange between our SET system and your LMS. And so now we can get a better cost because that'll take into hosting, yearly maintenance, so to speak. I mean, there's going to be yearly costs associated whether we're training 1,200 guys or 3,500. I mean, so that's our next step, is to get much more firm costs. And once we start getting a better picture, I can give you a better update as to the direction we're heading. But right now, because we're not doing any formal proposals right now, this is just trying to get across the board people out there providing LMS training.
And we are heading there.
We're heading there, yes. And because, the goal is to have online training in 2020.
Right.
And so I'm pretty confident here in the next month and a half, we'll have those costs back from this. Because I already have a technical document written. We just have to clean it up and fine tune it a little and then send it back to them and say, okay, next step, what would you, for a much larger scale, what would you, propose?
No chance of that happening before 2020.
you know, even because I would say no.
Because of all the things.
Right, and, you know, even if I could pick somebody today and say, you're the ones, depending on the contracting vehicle or the, you know, the process we have to go through on that. And then once it starts, for them to integrate the LMS with our system, I don't think that'd be.
Okay, it's not realistic, but
Right,
2020.
2020 is more,
2020 would be more
now again,
realistic, yes.
we may only start out with 1 or 2 modules online, but if we have another 8 hour, then we have, you know, 2 4 hours, and then the board can slowly incrementally increase.
But the main point is to get it in place
Right.
and start it, and then you can go from there.
And then we can go from there, so. The next thing is, and I'll pass these out. This is just kind of, we had provided back to you in May. We talked about cost savings, and these are estimates based on the budgets that we have for training year 2019. And keep in mind, the training budgets that the schools submit to us are estimates. And, you know, our track record has been, we usually get money back because we canceled classes, we haven't trained as many guys as we projected or whatever. So on the left-hand side is what we provided you back in May. And then kind of on the right-hand side of that gray line is a more current. And so when the board voted to have 4 hour show and shoots, you know, firearms, so we went back and, okay, what's that going to cost us? You know, based on how many classes we'd have to run, or qualification sessions, et cetera, 2 basic firearms. And so down that side of that gray line shows all the other things. You know, administrative costs. And of course, if we're providing less training, you know, we're not doing 20 hours of firearms training, we're not doing the advanced firearms, we're not doing 20 hours of Con Ed. There's going to be a reduction in schools' administrative costs. So we're trying to reflect that as well as some other costs. And so that green box there right now is an estimate on what training should cost us in 2019. And again, these are estimates. This doesn't take into account, you know, staff. We actually, for the firearms, we know we're probably going to have higher rate of failures than we normally do in the 20-hour training. So we try to take that into account. We're going to have a few more firearms sessions of show and shoot because the guy's failing and having to reshoot or whatever. So I want to try and keep this as a running document as we move forward. So it is, once we start getting online, you know, cost estimates and projections, we're going to try and balance all this out. What's it costing us? Do we need to cut somewhere else? Do we need to, you know, change what we're looking at or whatever? So this is really just an estimate, a snapshot in time where we think the training year is going to cost us.
And if I could just add on to that, what John's saying, on the fiscal report, you'll notice that our fee collections through June 30th of 2018 was at like approximately 1.7 million. That savings that we're trying to get to between the 1.7 and the 1.2 will be what we uncommit then to use towards the online training. Because that has been the goal of this whole session.
So come September, you know, if the commission approves the items you guys voted on in July, the 4 hour show and shoot and, you know, 8 hours Con Ed, all those things, then we can go back to the schools and go, okay, we need you to redo your budgets, take all these things out, you know, reduce these things because we're not doing 20 hours of firearms, you're not providing ammunition. So then we'll have their revised budgets for 2019. And we can show that to you in the November meeting where we are, you know, and see how close we get to this estimate. So,
But this in no way changes the thrust that needs to happen with the General Assembly. Because going forward into time, the inflation, so that $5 back in 1994, we're still training on right now, that $5 surcharge. I mean, even with these costs cutting, and even with the switch over to online, I still feel that we're going to have to continue to push with the General Assembly to get a surcharge increase, because it's going to get it may be 5 years down the road we kick the can, but at some point we're going to eat this back up again, and we're going to be back in the same point.
And if you look at the life of the program, you know, inflation, and as the board expanded or did different things, you know, it ate up that, you know, difference between what was available and what it was costing us. So. Okay. So this was basically for your information.
And it'll continue
Right.
continue to
We'll keep
morph it as.
keep this as a running document to try and show you where our estimates are. Like I said, the biggest one is the commission, if they approve everything, then we can go to the schools and say, okay, revise your budgets, take these things out, and give us new budgets. And then we'll have a better number of what we're committing to for 2019.
Okay, Diane, I know that you were going to speak on 2 issues that were raised during public voice at the last meeting.
Yes, let me go to my talking points here.
Okay.
Deborah, so I don't misstate anything. There were 2 questions. First, whether constable associations around the state who provide optional training to constables can advertise through PCCD, and the answer is no. It would be a conflict of interest for PCCD to advertise such commercial endeavors. Also, it would give the appearance that PCCD and the Constable Board are endorsing the training, and they cannot assume responsibility for this. The second question that was asked was whether PCCD can maintain the outside training records, meaning training provided by other entities outside the purview of the Board of Constables, and the answer to that is similarly no. PCCD staff work to maintain the training records of the entities which the Board has approved and cannot assume responsibility for maintaining other records.
So, and again, those were 2 things that were brought up during, I believe it was public voice at the July meeting. So we just wanted to address those because council did look into those issues for us. The next, any questions from the board members on any of that? Okay.
Good report.
The next 2 informational items are going to be the status of certifications, which is our normal updates to the board. As of July 30th, 2018, there were 1,178 constables and deputy constables currently listed as active and certified. Of those, 974, 82% were also certified to carry a firearm. Since the inception of the program in 1996, we have either trained through basic training or through a waiver examination 4,548 individuals. The next informational item is the CETS update, the Constable Certification, Education, and Training System. As of July 30th, there were 1,640 active registered constables and deputy constables as users in the system. A total of 1,129 were active and certified users, which is about 96% of our current active and certified constable population. Of those, of the 1,600 that are currently active registered constables, we had 1,144 that have chosen emails that prefer correspondence method, which that goes back into what Constable Westover was saying about our mailing costs have gone down significantly over the past few years since the inception of SETS as well. So that's just to show that there as well. And then we have 524 constables who are sharing their personal information in SETS as well. Right now we have 61 registered users from 33 county clerk and courts offices as well. Any questions or comments from the board on those updates? Okay. Anything else?
So you sent out this opioid crisis fact sheet. Was that a response to Constable Price asking about Narcan in the last meeting?
Yes and no. This had been prepared for a while from Penn State, and I was actually holding off on sending it out in a training bulletin, but I haven't been able to get a training bulletin approved to get mailed out, so we thought it was relevant to send it out now.
Yeah. When he brought that up at the last meeting, I've been initially resistant to the Narcan training, but I'll be honest with you, we just had 6 correctional officers in one of our state institutions close by us that got overdosed. They had accidental exposure to fentanyl inside the prison. That's smuggled in. 5 got treated to the hospital and released. 1 still in the hospital. And, in fact, the guy running the ship. So this Narcan thing is probably not a bad idea. This incorporate down the road where it's possible to get the training, because it's not, it's the accidental exposure, and that's what happened to these guys. This stuff is smuggled in the Bible, and so there you are. It comes in, and they had no clue, and they're just checking. They're just flipping through pages and that, and they get exposed. The dust flies, and it doesn't take a whole lot of this fentanyl in order to overdose somebody, and that's what ended up happening. unfortunately had Narcan at the prison to start resuscitating folks down in the hospital. But it's a real danger out here for all of us in law enforcement, and you know, with constables especially, if you're naive to the fact that it's not, you know, it's not possible on your line of work to have that happen, that's where you get hurt. So I'm glad Bud brought that up the last meeting because, you know, deputies are looking into it, and yeah, it's a real concern.
But in the sheriff's side, it's, you know, because same issues, prisoner transport, you know, with the local county, you know, well, most sheriffs don't want the county prison anymore, but they're transporting prisoners in the courthouse. You know, people are coming in, they're emptying their pockets, and maybe have to get searched or whatever. The accidental exposure is, you know, a lot of the sheriffs, their guys even in the courthouse, you know, are carrying it. So.
Okay. I appreciate it.
My thought on that was the fact, if you're working in your partner, you make an arrest and like you said, constable, you make an arrest and all of a sudden, boom, he's exposed. By the time you get an ambulance there or EMS or whatever, that could be the time that he could expire.
Yeah.
So I think it's essential maybe take a good look at Narcan. And I have a few legislators that are interested in getting that approved for us and provided for it.
You have a few?
Yeah.
Well, you only need about 245 more.
So would this be certification and use of Narcan? Is that what this would be?
Well, the issue is, you know, there's a lot of training going on for various entities.
Right.
And some constables may have been able to get in, you know, at their local level, with their local PD, just because they know the PD and, you know.
Right.
But just the issue of making sure it's available that they can get the training.
Okay.
You know, whether, not necessarily through us, but make sure other entities who provide it can include constables. You know, because sometimes there's been that, well, no constables, you know,
Right.
aren't allowed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just don't want us to fall into a trap or it go down the road where if we're carrying and certified with Narcan, then it's going to become our responsibility when we come upon an individual, like you might have thought, of OD to be doing that type of administration.
Yeah, I'm looking more at the end of self-preservation.
That's fine, that's good, right, but you know what, it opens up two doors.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Okay, so, I mean, that's just the whole thing.
I mean, I went through my EMT refresher, so we had, you know, I was able to get that training. But once again, you know, there's shelf life on this stuff and
Right.
everything else. So, you know, you have those issues. But once again, as a self-employed contractor
Right.
working with the courts, I guess you're making those good decisions on your own whether or not you need to carry it. And the training there's a lot of training going on out there. There's a lot of different agencies that are going, you know, because it is, it's a killer. And because it's a killer, you know,
Yeah.
it's getting the public's attention, at least in the EMS world.
Well, with Bud's initial proposal and Craig's comments this morning, they both touch on the constable being able to identify what's going on here.
Yeah.
Right? That's self-preservation, as you said.
Right.
Any constable that lulls himself into the alter reality that the things that happen to other law enforcement officers can't happen to them is foolish, because it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the infuriating part of this is it's just a very small amount that can, you know, that kind of exposure that can put you down. So that's the thing, you know, it's, I never saw that one coming, and that's just basically what it is. You
And
never
my
know what
concern is to my partner, the guy I'm working with. That's my concern.
So with this course or whatever, how we're instructed or presented, you know, encompass, you know, identification?
Well, we're not proposing a course at this point.
They're looking into it.
We did send out a fact sheet just to kind of, because there are some constables, as the judge said, you know, they kind of have blinders on. And, well, that happens to police because they do traffic stops, you know, as you say, it can be anywhere.
Right.
You know, you go in to do an eviction, you go into a certain process, and you can be exposed. So we did send out a fact sheet, you know, and we're put it out on the webpage so they can just start educating themselves if they're not already. You know, if they're not going to all the local entities at the county level, but Craig said there's a lot of training going on. So they should
I'm
get
sure
educated.
the last thing those 6 guys working that pod thought scary part of it. I mean, they're working within the prison system. They're worried about shanks. They're worried about a lot of stuff, but I think the fentanyl thing probably never really, you know.
That happened in Allegheny County, if you remember, about 9 months ago or a year.
So that, anyway.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Need a motion to adjourn?
Need a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
Second.
Roll call vote. Richard Wade?
Aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In a row.
My pleasure.